Good evening, everyone. Without any further delay, let's start our session. It is my pleasure to introduce you to the founder of Havisham Consulting, Mr. Havish. He is also the co-founder of Decode Research and Analytics. He is a MBA gold medalist, scholarship awardee, and also an author of 20 books. He conducted analytics sessions and courses across various IITs and IIMs, focusing on spreadsheet modeling and automation using VBA and Power Query, as well as data visualization on Power BI and Tableau. He has been awarded Indian Achievers Award for Young Entrepreneur based on the Indian Achievers Forum 2021, and he's also been awarded Top 10 Entrepreneurs with an Inspiring Story according to CIO Views 2020, and he has been awarded 40 under 40 Innovators by Analytics Insight 2019, and he also been top 10 trending speakers and thought leader uh, speak in 2019. With this brief introduction, I now request Mr. Havish to begin the session. Thank you.
Thank you. So hello everyone and good evening. We have about 90 minutes with us and you already have the agenda with you, but I would still like to get the expectation setting correct so that by the end of the session, all of us will have takeaways. But it is very important for us to remember what all we are going to cover and more importantly, what we are not going to cover. So I'm going to speak about the importance and the use cases for Excel, especially for your internship. A little bit about the future of Excel. What is TypeScript and why is it so important? Maybe not today, but in the next few years. Power Query, Power Pivot, some basic spreadsheet modeling, dynamic arrays. And then in PowerPoint, I want to focus a bit on how to present your work. So all the analytical work that you have done, how do you present it, as well as the storytelling side of it. Now, in terms of questions, you can put it on the chat window. That would be the best way to communicate with me. I will keep an eye on the chat window. If it's a quick question, you can ask it. I will answer it then and there. If the question is slightly longer and I can't answer it right now, then we are keeping about 15 to 20 minutes at the end of the workshop in which we will exclusively answer these questions. But it would be great if you can put your questions on the chat window. That way, what will happen is that we don't have to waste time later on. I've already shared all the files with you. I hope you had a chance to go through the pre-read and the pre-watch. The first thing I want to do is to work with dynamic arrays, which is a new topic in Excel. And I will be introducing many new features. Some of this you would not even have heard of. Now, how do you remember all of these things? One, of course, is that the session will be recorded. And the other is that I will be sharing all the links with you on this notepad that you see. And after the session is over, I'll be sending it across to you, right? This is the file that we are working on to start with, which is dynamicarrays.xlsx. And because you might not have all the features in your installed version of Excel, I would request if you can upload it to Microsoft 365. I'm also going to do the same thing. As you can see, I'm opening office.com, right? And you can any ID that you have, you can even sign in with a free account. If you feel that it's too much effort and you want to probably watch the recording later, you're more than welcome to do that, right? From my side, I'll demonstrate every single example. But if you feel that you want to focus more on watching and then you can practice later, you're more than welcome to do that. All right, I'm signing it with my free account here on office.com. And it says that I only have 15 minutes of battery remaining. So give me 10 seconds to connect my charger. All right. So the first thing I'm doing is to take this file, which is dynamic arrays, and I'll simply drag it here. I've already created the problem statements for you, and there are a bunch of sheets that we have, and we'll go through them one by one. If you look at the first problem statement, it says that I'm starting with sheet number 2, right? If you look at the problem statement, it seems very simple at first glance. It says that the sales for some customers, and you want to create a scenario with a target for next year. For example, 20,000 was done previous year, and we want to create a 10% YOY growth for the next year. Can anybody tell me quickly, either put it on the chat window or unmute yourself, what should be the formula that I write? Like, where should we put the dollar signs? To be able to copy this formula in all the cells, where should the dollar signs come? Okay, so Praneeth, we can't have a dollar after 5. It has to be either before 5 or before D, right? Okay, so I can see that a lot of you are giving me responses with mixed referencing. That means a single dollar. But you know what? We don't have to do any of that. Usually, how do we work on Excel? We will say equal to C6 into D5, and then I'll copy this formula in all the cells, but I will put a dollar here and here, correct? And then we will simply say 1 plus D5. What we're doing is 21,000 plus 1.1% of, so this essentially gives me 23,100, and then you copy and paste it, correct? I don't like this approach for a number of reasons. You have to write a formula, then you have to copy and paste it, and then you have to remember how to put the dollars. What if you get something wrong? Everything will crash. But now with the power of dynamic arrays, what I can do is I can simply say equal to C6 colon C13. Okay, watch carefully. C6 colon C13 multiplied by 1 plus D5 colon G5. Result into multiple cells like this. Pretty cool, right? No dollars required. Saves a lot of time because you don't have to do the copy paste thing. Even if you have 1,000 cells with you, you will simply be able to write a single formula that spills into multiple cells. Any questions on this, anyone? Just take a moment, because this is the first example that we have done, and let me know if you have any questions on this, what we have done. So while you're thinking of things to ask, like I promised, I'm also sharing the links with you for further reading. So this concept is called dynamic array formulas. Excel is 36 years old, but dynamic arrays is just 2 years old. And even today, not all organizations have it, because you need to have Microsoft 365 for this, right? Obviously, online it works, but if you have Office 2010, 13, 16, or 19, it will not work. You will need to have Office 2021, which has not even been launched yet, right? So you need to have a subscription-based Office for this. I'm sharing the link with you. You can go back and have a look at this. But super, super important topic, which is dynamic arrays, because this has completely changed the computation engine of Excel. You know how we traditionally used to think of building Excel formulas and models, that has completely been flipped on its head, because now people don't have to learn how dollars work, but you have to learn how dynamic arrays work. Just wait for 30 seconds in case anybody has any questions on this, and then I'll cover the other examples. Right? Okay, let me show you something else. This is a very simple example, but this will essentially drive the point home as to what I'm trying to show you. Can somebody tell me, if I write equal to sum, equal to length, it gives me 5, and same thing, equal to length gives me 5, and then I say the sum of these two, it gives me 10, which is the length of characters. Now the thing is that length will only accept a text value. What is written here? It's a single text. But if you look at sum will accept obviously multiple numbers, correct? And I'll also show you the formula here. Okay, now tell me, is this correct or incorrect? What I've written just now. Like, what is your first guess? The way I've created the formula, which is sum of length of B3 and B4, do you think this is correct or incorrect? It seems incorrect, right? So I can see that somebody did say correct, but a lot of you say incorrect. And you know what? Even though it is working, I would be happier if you told me, Havish, it was incorrect, because this is something very new. It has just been like this for about 18 months. I have been working in Excel since 2000. I have 15 years of experience. I've authored 20 books. And let me tell you, this used to give you an error. It is only with the launch of dynamic arrays that it is working. If you look at this, it is not supposed to work. There is no concept of length of B3, B4, because length can only accept a string. It cannot accept a range of values. But now with the power of dynamic arrays, what we're able to do is, we are able to tell Excel that if I'm giving you a range, which is an array, you break it down into two parts. You'd find the length of B3, store it, find the length of B4, store it, and then find the sum of both these numbers, right? For most of you on your computers, if you try to replicate what I've done just now, it will not work. It will result in a value error, right? Yeah, but this drives the point home what dynamic arrays are capable of. It's a very subtle change. It's not something bold and big where there is a new function that has been launched. The way Excel works has completely changed after dynamic arrays were launched. Now let's look at a more practical example. Let me look at, okay, this one is very cool. What I have here is a range of values, right? And I have some blank cells. Can somebody tell me how many blanks do we have? What function do we write if I want to find how many blanks we have in this range? Is there a formula that I can write, or is there an inbuilt function? Okay, so is blank will not work, but absolutely. A lot of you are saying count blank, correct. We say equal to count blank. And without any fuss, it just tells me there are 3 blank cells. Fair enough. Now, can somebody tell me, how do we find how many errors are there? Because there is no function called equal to count errors, right? And that's where we are stuck. We want to count how many errors are coming. How do you do that? Any ideas? Sure, but Siddharth, if you do is error will be working on a single cell, right? And it's still not counting it. Okay, so Satvik, subtract the blanks and the numbers from all cells. Yeah, but that's like, I mean, that's not the correct approach, right? I mean, I know that would work when you can count everything and then subtract the blanks, but there is a possibility of other types of data types in it as well, right? Okay, now let's see how we do this. Equal to is error, which means if I do the is error for a single cell, it gives me either true or false, obviously. If I say the is error for this one, it tells me true. What we want to do is to find the is error for the entire grid, or what we call the array here. What will that do? It will essentially give us 10 rows into 4 columns. It will give us 40 values with a range of true and false. But the question is, how do you count how many trues are coming? Because true is a text, right? T-R-U-E, and false is another text. This is where we have to convert the true and false into 1 and 0, which means to convert this into 1 and 0, I'll use something called the double unary operator, which is a double negative like this. We have a range of trues and false. The objective is to convert them into ones and zeros. And to do that, we use something called the double unary or the double negative, which is a 2 minus sign. That will convert everything into ones and zeros. And then finally, you can come and call it, you can come in the beginning and you can call it sum, and it will tell you that there are 4 errors in the data. What is the concept of the double unary? You can just Google it. I'll share the link with you. And the double unary is a very little known concept in Excel, which has been around for many years, which allows you to essentially coerce your true and false values into, like this, into ones and zeros. All this is used for very advanced data modeling, because in advanced data modeling, you will have logical results that will come in, but then you can't do much with trues and false. So you have to convert them into ones and zeros. I'll share this. This is the double unary. Any questions on this, anyone? I noticed that Shashank, you said count of f of s0. That would work too, but I think this is more elegant, isn't it? Because here I don't have to use the if statement, which will add another function and another layer of complexity. This one is more elegant because we're simply summing up the errors rather than counting if results of is0, but that would work as well. Right, I'll just wait for a minute in case anybody has any questions. Right, and remember, there are no silly questions. You know, this is an internship, pre-internship workshop, right? I did my internship during my MBA with Coca-Cola, right, in Delhi. I was working at the regional office, and I was really good with Excel even back then. And I remember Excel for me was literally like a USP, because I was able to do things much faster and present data much better than everybody else out there. And this is 2008 that I'm talking about, right? But I mean, these are always skills where there is no upper limit. The more you learn, the better you get at it. Everybody knows how to work on Excel. That's the problem. If you want to get really good at it, then you have to identify these areas of learning. Right? Okay. The next thing I want to show you is this. This is primarily a financial modeling problem. And this is a part of the problem that I'm sharing with you. Very often when you're doing project management, you're in operations or in finance, you have to create a sequence of days, because you might want to find out how many working days are there in a project period. How do you bill the client? From a cost perspective, what is the cost allocation? Many reasons are there. Now, if I ask you to create a sequence of dates, ignore the weekends for now, from the 8th of July till the 30th of September, traditionally, what do? You say, fine, Havish, I will write this, and then I will essentially have to drag it down. And that works. But then that's not really dynamic, right? Like, it's okay for a one-time effort, but then what if you want it to be dynamic, where you can control the inputs, which is the start and the end value? This is where we use a function called sequence. Again, it's a new function in dynamic arrays. How does it work? The number of rows that you want will be how much? It will essentially be the end date minus the start date, obviously, right? And how many columns? We just want one column. What is the start value? The 8th of July. The step is the counter, so that's just one, because I want 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, like that. And it gives me, let me just change the format here to date. And if you notice, it gives us very nicely from 8th of July till 29th of September. The first date is not included. So we can just make it +1 so that it gives us till the, just copy the format as well. Okay, it gives us till the 30th of September. Very cool. Now, let me also go full screen. Now, obviously, this can be changed. If I make it 15th of July 2020, it only gives me till the 15th. And now if I say the project is going to get overstretched till the 21st, then it gives me the 21st. Super cool. But what if you only want to find a sequence of dates which are for working days? Because you're not going to bill the client for weekends, right? Now, you can write another formula and you can then say that, okay, now I want to remove the Saturday and the Sunday, but what is the most elegant way of doing that? So this is the formula we have written. I just write it here. Okay. Now this part is a little tricky. You just have to pay attention here. Okay. First, let me explain it to you in a different cell. I will say filter, which is going to filter the data. So right now we have 14 values with us for 2 weeks. I just want to filter those which are a working day, which means a weekday. How do we do that? Please watch. I will say equal to weekday of F6 hash. That means F6 is the first item in the array, and hash means I'm selecting all the values. Now, suddenly, what is a hash that is popping up? If you Google it, you will see that. What is hash in Excel? You will see that. There is a fantastic video that will show you. Why can't I seem to find it? Just give me 30 seconds, because Leila has a great video on this, and I would like you to watch it. Just a moment. That's strange. Has she taken it down? Just a moment. Never mind. So Excel dynamic arrays and hash. Just give me a moment. Yeah, I think I can share this link with you. You can go back and have a look at it later. Right? Essentially, the idea is that hash means that if I say equal to F6 hash, because F6 is not one value, it's a range of values, because there's only one formula, it will give you the same result, which makes sense, right? But then I don't really want the entire range. I just want to find which is a weekday and which is a weekend. So we will say, I want to find equal to weekday. So in F6 hash, what is the return type? I will choose 1, which means 4, 5, 6, 7. Right? I'm just changing the start to today and changing this to 15th of April 2021. Now we know that today is Thursday, so it is giving me 5 here. Right? Just remember that. So according to our logic, if I use 1, then we are getting 5. If I choose 2, that means it is 4. If I choose 0, then it doesn't work. So this is essentially the return type that we are looking at. So this is telling me that the 1st of April, which is Thursday, is coming as a 5. Right? So just remember, Thursday is 5, Friday will be 6, and then Saturday will be 7. So the week starts on Sunday, which is equal to 1. So obviously, if 1 is Sunday, that means that you can see that I have the 4th of April, which will be a Sunday, and then the 3rd of April will be a Saturday, which is 7. But then what do I do with these numbers? We are not interested in all the numbers, right? We are just interested in 7 and 1. So I will say, according to this logic, what do we want? By the way, there are different types of return types, as you can see. So if I use 11 as a return type, it tells me 6 for Saturday and 7 for Sunday. I'm just writing it here. With return type 11, because I'll be sharing this file with you later. Return type 11, Saturday is equal to 6 and Sunday is equal to 7. Okay? Hope that makes sense. So you can verify the results here, 3rd and 4th of April. But we are not interested in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, only 6 and 7. So I will say is greater than 5. Now what happens? It will only show me true and false as 2 results. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will become false, and only 6 and 7 will become true, like this. And what do we want to do now? If I can turn on my annotation tool to show you, from this range of 14 dates that we have, we are only interested to show these. 1 second. We're only interested to show this, which is the false, right? Because the false is the working day and the true will be the weekend, correct? But how do we don't want false for the weekday, we want true for the weekday. I'll just say less than 6, this way. The true is the result that we want. And finally, we can say equal to filter. What are we filtering? We are filtering the entire range of 14 days. And what is the inclusion criteria? We only want to include the truth, not the false. And the result, everybody will just tell me that in this project, which started on the 1st of April and is ending on the 15th of April, these are the working days that we have. How cool is that? Now to combine everything together, because we don't have to make 3 formulas for this, right? What I'll do here is very smartly, I will say, this sequence that I'm creating, I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to give it a name, and it can be any name. Let me just call it my calc, right? That's the name I'm giving. And how am I using my calc now? The way I'm going to use my calc now is I will use filter in which I'm filtering my calc. And what is the inclusion criteria? The inclusion criteria will be what I just showed you, right? Which is that my calc, right? And the weekday has to be greater than 5. That means weekday for my calc has to be greater than 5. And let's quickly check the formula once. Okay, so we have selected comma 11. Let me just complete it. So we are using weekday f6 hash comma 11 greater than 6. 1 second. All right, so this part seems okay. So my calc comma 11 is less than 6, and let me just see if there's something else that I'm not done correctly. We don't need to close the parentheses here. And just give me a moment. Okay, this is week, so this should be weekday. And what else have I left out? I don't know. Can somebody spot? There seems to be some tiny thing that I've not done correctly. You know, the problem with Excel Online is that it doesn't give you error handling. So that's why I'm a little stuck here, but that's all right. I'm sure we'll be able to figure it out. But it's a good practice for all of you. Okay, so my calc is okay. Now this should be correct. So sequence is also okay. Oh, perfect. It's working now. Yeah. So see how cool this is. I am deleting everything. This function that I've written just now in front of you is now going to tell me that between the 1st and the 15th of April, these are the working days that I have. I work as a trainer with PwC, EY, with investment banking firms like D. Shaw, and trust people, and then use conditional formatting and then find out how many working days are here. And now this is dynamic. How cool is that? Like I can just change this, let's say the 1st of May, and it just tells me that between the 1st of April and the 1st of May, this is a list of the working days that you have. Right? I'll just show you the formula, and you can ask me whatever questions you have now. Right? I'll also share the link for let to tell you how let works. Just a moment. So let in Excel. Let in Excel is like a variable declaration, which you do in programming. So if you want to reuse the same calculation numerous times, right? So it's an assignment for a calculation result. So if I want to use the same calculation multiple times in a formula, and you want to improve the bandwidth, the performance of the formula, let is what you do. It's very new. Let came, I think, about a year back or so. I'll share the link with you. So this is on let. Great. You can ask your questions now. Take your time. Don't be in a hurry. This is a very interesting problem statement. We were combining a number of things. And any questions that you have, please feel free to ask. Any question, any observation? I hope you're able to follow the flow. Trust me, it takes a lot of time to wrap your head around it. Not because the functions are long. I mean, that's not really the point. The length of a formula has very little to do with the complexity. I can maybe write a 10-line formula, which is very simple, or I can write a 2 or 3-line formula that is very complex, right? There is no correlation between the length and the complexity. But in your mind, the process should be clear. What did we do? We created a sequence of dates. We assigned it to a variable called mycalc. Then we are filtering that range of dates, but we're only filtering those dates where the weekday is coming greater than 6. Basically, greater than 6 is what we want to remove, which is 6 and 7. So the moment I say I only want to take the values which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, from the sequence of days that I created, I managed to remove those values. That's the flow that we are following. If you end up doing this manually in 3, 4 steps, trust me, it's the same logic that you will follow. But the advantage of dynamic arrays and let combined together is that it enables you to essentially build your own operations inside a single formula, right? But what is the future? Like, this is what I'm showing you now, which I can safely say very few of you would have known. And that's okay, because very few people, even in the corporate, know about these things. It takes time to get used to new things in Excel. The future of Excel is something even more than this, which is called Lambda. If any of you have worked with Python or R, you know how you can create anonymous functions on Excel, on Python, right? Lambda is considered the most powerful function on Excel, and it just was launched in January 2021, right? This is something called Turing complete, right? So Turing complete essentially means that in one line, it can do any computation in the Excel formula language. There is nothing that you can't create. For example, if you want to do recursion, you can do that. I mean, you can go through the article later. I also don't have access to it. It's a very new feature. I will probably get access in some time. But the basic idea is that you can now create your own functions in Excel without learning any coding or any programming, right? So recursion is one of the main reasons why Lambda is important. Like earlier, you could not have done stuff like this, right? Which is now possible. I will not get into further detail now. I'll just share it with you. But to prepare yourself for the next 5 years, please start learning it now, because suddenly there is an influx of so many things happening in Excel, what we've seen in the last 2, 3 years. And a lot of people are finding it difficult to cope up with all of this, right? And I have just started. I haven't even covered things like TypeScript and all, right? And that's why I'm sharing all the links, so that you don't forget it and you don't have to go running here and there. You will be able to go to the link and read about all these things. In fact, Lambda is so important to Excel that Satya Nadella had a post when it was launched about a month or a month and a half back on LinkedIn, saying that we are so proud to launch Lambda. Like, this is considered one of the pivotal changes in Excel, which is going to make Excel not a programming language as such, but comparable to what you can do with programming languages. So definitely have a look at this. It's a small read. There is also a video there, and I'm sure you will have a lot of fun while watching it. Great. Coming back to where we started, I've given a little bit of idea about how dynamic arrays work, how a little bit of modeling is done in terms of using dynamic arrays. I want to focus on TypeScript now. That's the elephant in the room, the big one. And then I'll talk a little bit about Power Query and Power Pivot, for which I have a different example. Now, in terms of TypeScript, the idea of Excel is that you can run mini web apps, right? Let me explain that. If I open normal Excel, my native desktop Excel, you will notice that Excel is an application, everybody knows that. But if I go to insert and I have add-ins, this one, there is a marketplace available. And it's a store similar to the Android and the iOS store, where different developers can create their own applications. There are about 500 applications available, and I also have one. My first application was just approved about 2 weeks back, right? What do these applications do? Let me give you an example. Let us say that you want to do a currency conversion, right? So I can just type currency, and you notice that people have created, developers around the world have created different types of currency conversions. So there is a stock connector. Let's try that. And what you see right now, this option that you see, this is a web page. That means, let me try and explain it to you. What you see here is a web page. That means this is like a browser window that is running on top of Excel. Just like you have Chrome or Edge or Bing or whatever it is, this is how you're running the browser window, right? This is a web page that is running on top of Excel. So if I say, let's say MSFT, you will notice that I can press OK, and it automatically shows me the value for Microsoft, 241. How cool is that? Now the question is, but how is it even working? What Excel is now doing is that it is able to run an API call, and it is able to connect to free websites like So there's a website called Refinitiv. I'm not sure if you've heard of it or not, which Microsoft has partnered with, which allows you to get a very large company. It provides financial market data, and it's a part of the LSE, right? London Stock Exchange owns it. I think it has sold it now. No, it was with Blackstone earlier. Now they have sold it. Yeah, something like that. So Microsoft has partnered with Refinitiv, and even with a free account, you can get stock history like this. Very cool, right? Now, when I say it's the web page, what I mean to say is like, this is my add-in, which I have called Swapcase. What does it do? From an automation perspective, if I say that I am Calcutta and I have Havisham Consulting written here, right? And I ask you, how do you convert this into lowercase? Immediately the answer is like, what's so difficult about that? I can simply write equal to lower, copy the formula down, copy the results, paste it, and then remove the formula. But don't you feel that this is a process which can be improved? That means, look at the number of steps required. First step, I have to write the formula. Second step, I have to copy it down. Third step, I have to copy the result. Fourth step, I have to paste it. And the fifth step, I have to remove the formula. What have I done? I have said, without using any formulas, you can just click on a button and it can change the case for you. See, this is not like this will not change how the world works, but it's efficient, isn't it? Imagine you have 1,000 rows with you. You have to select it, write a formula, go back, copy paste special value. Then some errors might happen. You might change the formulas. There are many issues that can come up. That is why we have created an add-in that allows you to do this. But how is it working? If you right click and you say inspect, you will notice that this is the browser window, which means just like when you're working on the internet, if I open I am Calcutta and I come to the home page and I simply want to change something. Let's say it says news, right? And I just right click, inspect, and then I take my cursor to this part which says news. You can see that it says news here in the DOM, which is the document browser. It says I am Calcutta in the news, that's the title. And maybe if I want to change something here, I can just double click and I can say that this is my fresh news and the web page is changing. Most of you who come from engineering would know what we are doing, but essentially the browser is an integrated development environment, which is a complete debugging console environment where you can do any programming that you want with JavaScript, correct? What the browser is doing is essentially converting the backend, which is the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, into a web page which has dynamic elements in it, right? So like if you look at this link, what is this link currently connecting to? The link is connecting to imcal.ac/news. If I wanted to, I can just right click and then edit as HTML, and I can relink it to my own website, for example, right? This is exactly the same thing that we are doing here as well. If you notice, this is nothing. This is a web page that is being displayed, which allows you to perform all these actions that I'm showing you. So how have we created it? We have created it using HTML and CSS and JavaScript. But then what is TypeScript? So TypeScript is a programming language which has been created by Microsoft, right? And it's maintained by Microsoft, but it is just a superset of JavaScript. It's JavaScript with a few additional functionalities that Microsoft has created. So you can work either on JavaScript or on TypeScript. And if you know one, then learning the other one is not difficult, right? And then to create the add-in, you have different frameworks available. For example, you have React, which Facebook maintains. Then you have Angular, which Google maintains. Then you have something new called Vue, right? Vue is also very nice, maintained independently, but it's catching up very, very fast. If you look at JavaScript frameworks, you will notice that there are many JavaScript frameworks available which allow you to perform these tasks. Now, how come this is an Excel workshop and suddenly I'm talking about programming in JavaScript? Because you don't have a choice. The fact of the matter is that if you Google JavaScript Excel, you will notice that Microsoft has started transitioning to JavaScript now. It's not a question of whether you like it or dislike it or whether you know it or don't know it. You have to. And all of these are very new. Do you see this? 2020, 2020, 2021. In fact, if you saw one of the videos that I shared with you, which is Future of VBA by Bill Jelen. One second. It is called VBA killer, right? Bill Jelen is called Mr. Excel. He is considered the leading authority on Excel in the world. He has been working with Excel since the day it was launched in 1985. And he's like the leading authority on Excel in the world. When JavaScript became a replacement to VBA, he came up with a video on YouTube saying, Excel VBA killer, TypeScript debuts in Excel. And if I could just play the description for you, you will notice that. Look at what he said. He said that for 16 years, people have asked me if Excel VBA will be around forever. And he used to say that they can't kill it until there is a viable replacement. And now, for the first time, Office Scripts offers a macro recorder called TypeScript. And this will eventually kill Excel VBA. So think of financial firms and institutions who have been working on VBA for 10, 15 years. Now that entire concept is gone, because now once TypeScript will take over, all that work that we have done, all that legacy work will now have to be ported over and sort of replaced. But that's just the way it works. If you look at Excel Online, I have something called I'll not get into it, you can Google it. So now you can do TypeScript on Excel Online as well, because it's a web-friendly language. And all of you who want to get into finance, investment banking, professional services firms and all, you have to learn these things, right? Like right now, we have started training organizations a little bit on what is TypeScript and how to get comfortable with it, because most of these guys don't come from a programming background. But like I said, like it or hate it, fact of the matter is that you don't have a choice now, because that's the way Microsoft is moving forward. And if you want to keep pace with it, you will have to start reading about JavaScript Excel. Like this is not a priority right now. It's not that you have to do it right now, but then definitely spend maybe 5-10% of your time focusing on this aspect, right? I'll just share the correct link with you. Just give me a moment. So JavaScript Excel. Yeah, I'll just share this link. It's going to be a little challenging for you to catch up, especially if you don't come from, a comfortable background in coding, but that's okay. I mean, to share my story, I'm a commerce student with an MBA in marketing and finance. I started teaching myself coding in 2014 when I was 28, 27. What I'm trying to tell you is that today I work with VBA, learning it at a time where there was not even a need in the market. But today, if you look at job profiles and opportunities, you will see that slowly organizations started asking you, do you know VBA? Do you know, maybe not JavaScript and all, but at least VBA, Power Query, Power Pivot are things that they're asking for. So, I mean, if you want to apply for data heavy profiles, then this is stuff that all of you should be comfortable with. So definitely in your internships as well, whether the organization asks for it or not, if you want to have like that jump ahead, if you want to show them something they've never seen earlier, definitely make sure to work on areas like dynamic arrays. Right. I would really encourage all of you to go and look at the store once you have time and just get a sense, what all is available. Like now even SAP has partnered with Microsoft. There is an SAP Analytics add-in available for Excel. Then Jira has also partnered. Jira has an official add-in available, right? There are stuff available for cryptocurrencies as well. There's a lot, and I will not take you through all of this right now, but you should definitely go and have a look at it. And there are two people I would like you to follow on LinkedIn. I'll just write their names here. One is Keyur Patel, who is the program manager for Excel on Microsoft, and the other is Sudhi Ramamurthy, right? He is also on the Excel team. Please follow these guys. I mean, and the final guy is Brian Jones, who's the head of Excel for Microsoft. He's been a veteran at Excel for about 20, 25 years or something. He's been with Microsoft. He's the head of Excel. Please definitely follow these guys. And of course, Bill Jelen on YouTube. He's the Excel guru. There are many Excel gurus in the world. But if you're short on time and if you can just follow a few guys, these are the people who you should be following regularly. Great. I will also check the time. So it's 8:45. So we're on track. I just want to quickly show you an example on Power Query and Power Pivot, and then a little bit of PowerPoint, and then we'll do the Q&A. So in Power Query and Power Pivot, These are two power tools. That's why the name is called Power. And recently, Microsoft has become quite focused on using Power as their, like their leading prefix for different technologies they're offering. They have something called Power Query. They have something called Power Pivot. They also have something called Power Automate, which is a RPA tool, which used to be called Microsoft Flow earlier. Now they have rebranded it to Power Automate, which looks like this. If I can just show it to you. This again is going to be a huge tool with an impact in the future. It's an automation tool where you can get anything about RPA, like Automation Anywhere and Blue Prism, and I don't remember the third one. There are three big ones. IBM is also into RPA now. You can see this is an automation tool, and not just automation for Excel. It is automation at a system level, at an OS level. So anything that you're doing, this stuff can be automated, right? Like, for example, how do you extract images from PDF, or how to do OCR, right? Character recognition, right? I'm not going to show you anything right now, but this is on a periphery, not related to Excel as such, but definitely have a look at Power Automate. But yeah, I want to focus on Power Query, which is this, right? Power Query is an ETL tool. It is similar to SQL. And the question people have is that, but Havish, does Microsoft not already have SQL Server analysis services? So why do we need a third tool? Like we have Excel, we have SQL, but then why do we need something in the middle? You need something in the middle because there is a very huge gap between Excel users and IT administrators who know database administrators. And if you look at existing challenges that organizations have, finding and connecting to data is difficult. Data connectivity is fragmented. Data has to be reshaped before consumption. Any shaping is not repeatable. And the volume, velocity, and the variety, which is big data, is making a huge impact. Excel has these challenges. What you see here, this is something Excel is not really good at. And that's the reason Microsoft has now come up with not a stopgap solution, but an intermediary solution called Power Query, right? I'll just share the website with all of you. If you can give me a moment. So Power Query, Microsoft, and yeah. So this is the landing page, everyone. It's a data prepping, automation, transformation, ETL tool. And the advantage is it can do more than 300 transformations, connect to hundreds of data sources, including APIs and ODCs and whatnot. I mean, everything it can connect to, and no coding required. That's a bit of a lie. You still have to write functions and formulas, but sure, you don't have to program it. And where is it available? It is available on Power BI, which is the leading BI tool in the market. It's available on CDS. CDS is what you call a common data service. Now, Microsoft has rebranded it to something called Dataverse just a few months back. I'll not get into detail. You can go back and do it. SQL, of course, everybody knows. And then Power Automate, which I just showed you, right? So on different Microsoft platforms now, Power Query is going to be available. And what does it do? I want to give you a live example. Power Query is going to make us capable of doing things like this, right? This is the last example on Excel, so please pay attention. I have a problem statement here where I have the sales for, if all of you can see, I have the sales for 3 years. 2013, 14, and 15, and I also have the sales for 2016. But the problem is there is some missing data. That means if you look at 2013, you will notice that we have the order date, ship date, ship mode, customer ID, segment, city, state, region, subcategory, sales quantity, profit, which is great. There are two missing values. One is the customer name, which is not there. The other is the category, which is not there. We know that DP 13,000 purchased paper, but we don't know paper belongs to which category. We also don't know DP 13,000 is which customer, correct? Where is this data? This data is in a different file called IDA name, which is my lookup table. In IDA name, we have a list of all the 793 customers and their corresponding ID. And we also have a list of all of the categories along with the subcategory. Very simple. There are 17 subcategories. Now, if I ask you, how would you solve this problem? Everybody will say, Havish, we will do a VLOOKUP. That's what we have been told to do, right? VLOOKUP is the third most used function in the world. Excel has more than 600 functions. The largest used is sum, followed by average, followed by VLOOKUP. That just goes to show you how important it is. But then if I do VLOOKUP, that means it's manual. I have to write the formula, copy and paste it, and I have to do it with 4 different files. I don't want to do that. I want to automate the process. Right? So this is a live example. Please watch. I'm opening a new Excel file right in front of you. The first thing I will do is to go to data, and there is a group called get and transform data. This, everyone, is nothing but Power Query. For reasons that I don't understand, Microsoft has decided not to call it Power Query on Excel. They call it get and transform data. I don't know why they have complicated things so much, but remember, this is nothing but, if you notice, Power Query. Power Query is not available on Excel Online. It is only available on Power BI Online. Power Query is inbuilt in Excel. It's free of cost, and it is available in Excel 2013, 16, and 2019. Basically, all the versions starting from 13. How does it work? You notice I can connect to other Excel files, obviously, text, CSV, JSON, XML, PDFs, but I can also connect to databases, including SAP. I can connect to Microsoft Cloud. I can, of course, connect to Power BI, different online services, and also other services. I can even connect to Hadoop. So even big data, Google, BigQuery, Amazon Web Services, there is literally nothing I can't connect to using Excel. So Excel is not the same Excel it used to be, right? Where people say, oh, Havish, Excel is slow and it has a 10 lakh limit. That's not true. I handle projects for clients where I work with 5 crore records on Excel, because now Excel has the capability of handling that. And how do we do that? By using Power Query. Let's see what we do. I'm going to select this folder path right in front of you, Control C, and in data, get data from file, I will select from folder, because we want to append all the files. And when we select the folder, I will just paste my path here and select old, this one. Click on open. The first thing that Excel does is it confirms to me that there are 3 files in that folder. Very nice, isn't it? Imagine there were 300 files in a folder. This will also work. The files can be in OneDrive or SharePoint, wherever it is. Combine and transform. And the final step that is required is that I have to select the sheet. So I select the sheet, which is sheet 1, and press OK. And you know what? That's it. The moment you click on the folder, select the files and click the sheet, you notice there is a new window opening up called Power Query Editor. And magically, all the 3 files have been combined, 13, 14, and 15. How cool is that? As recent as 2016, 2017, as a consultant, I used to work with clients charging them money to write VBA codes to do this data appending. And now with a single click, with zero coding knowledge, anybody in the world can append multiple files from a folder. There's a question. Let me quickly see that. Amrita, sure. Just allow me to, even though there's a video that I have on YouTube that covers this entire thing, I'll share that with you as well. But since this is something I expect you to use in your internship, please have a look, everyone. I have an Excel file. I go to data. Then I go to get data. And then from file. And then from folder. So far, so good. I select the folder that I want, which is old, which remember has 3 files in it. I open it and it confirms to me that yes, Havish, there are 3 files in that folder. We click on combine and transform, the very first option. And once we have done that, we will select the sheet which we want and then press OK. And that's it. It will automatically combine all the files into a single appended file. And as you can see, I have 2013, 14, and 15. But the wow factor does not end there. Once the file has been combined, I can close and apply. So I'll take it back to Excel. And obviously, you notice we have 2013, 14, 15. What if in the future a new file gets added? Let me do that. I'm selecting 2016 and dragging it in the same folder right in front of you. How do you automate and how do you refresh the entire process? Right click, refresh. Right click, refresh, and you notice instantaneously you get 2016 as well. How cool is that? Right. So Ajay, the files will need to have the same headers in the sense that the spelling has to be the same. Like if it says segment, it has to be segment in all the files. It can't be SEG. The spelling has to match, but the column number can differ. The column order can also differ. So if the columns are not in the same order everywhere, it will still be able to handle it. Right. So there are obviously several issues that are there. Everything can be handled. And how do we handle it? If I can show you, right click, table and Power Query editor. This is how Power Query looks, everyone. So like I told you earlier, Microsoft is sort of lying to you. They say you don't need to code, but you do need to code. You notice that there is some code that is running behind the scene, which is able to take the files from the folder, and step by step, it is transforming it till it ends up giving you the combined data set. Absolutely. So Shashank, we can do different types of joins. If you notice, I'm not doing it right now, but I'm just showing you the options. Every option that you have available on SQL, you have different types of joins available as well, which is so cool, right? Because Excel never had these capabilities. In Excel, we only had VLOOKUP, which is a full outer join, which is actually a left outer join, right? But if you want full outer, anti-joins and all of that, we never had that capability in Excel, but now you do using Power Query, as you can see, right? And how is this automation? Because if you notice on the right side, there are these applied steps. And if you go through each of these steps, you will see that this is how Power Query is able to combine the data from all the files. I'm not taking you through all of these steps right now. All of this is working automatically. But yeah, this is how Power Query works now. And today, if you tell somebody that you're an advanced Excel user, you have to know what Power Query is. Like if you say I'm very good with Excel, but I only work with formulas and functions, that's not good enough, because you need to know how Power Query works, right? Power Query is a very integral part of Excel. Great. So we have one part, we have the sales data, fair enough. But we also need the other two things, right? We need the customer name and the segment. Let's not do the segment, let's only do the customer name. So I will insert, on data, I will get data from file from Excel, right? Which file do we want to select? My customer ID. And here, if you notice, we have ID and name, and I'll transform it. Okay. So now you notice we have two queries. One is called old, which is actually sales. So I just call it fact underscore sales because it's a fact table. And the other one becomes dim underscore ID because that's a dimension, dim underscore ID. But the question is that they're still not connected to each other, isn't it? Like I have to connect both of them. How do you do that? Before we do that, you notice the name is not correct. It says surname, comma, first name. It should be first name space surname, correct? Now, typically you will say, fine, we need a left, right, find, substitute formula. But we have a little bit of machine learning in Power Query. So if you notice, we have some options available. One is called column from example on the left side, which is a bit of a machine learning tool where you can give it a trained data set and it will automatically give you the results. Let me show you how it works. I click on column from examples. And now Excel is saying, enter some sample values to create a new column. That's the training data set, right? So this is supervised learning that we are doing. So I will say, fine, I want you to only take out Darren. We trained it and it automatically is able to replicate it for the rest of the data. How cool is that? Did I write a formula? Absolutely not. If I said I only want Paz, it would have only given me the surname. Very cool, right? If I said I only want DP, it only gives me the first initial of the first name and the first initial of the surname. If I said I wanted D dot Paz, it doesn't work, no problem. Let me give it one more sample. So I give it P dot Ober and it gives me all the data. You see what I'm doing, right? This entire formula, everybody, is automated. We did not have to write it. We just had to give Power Query a few samples and it automatically created the formula for us. So now you notice, if I press OK, this entire formula that you see has been created automatically. That is how powerful Power Query is. If you wanted to write it yourself, you could have, but then you don't need to because you have this fantastic tool called column from examples, right? Let me delete this and let me call this my name. So far, so good. But now there is another issue. The issue is that we have the IDs in one table, we have the names in one table, we have the sales data in another table. Now, usually we will say, let's do a VLOOKUP, but then I don't want to do that. I want to create a model. To create a model, we need something called Power Pivot. Okay. Now, most of you will not see Power Pivot on your computer. How do you enable it? It's only a one-time thing. You have to go to File, then you go to Options, and then you select Add-ins. So File, Options, Add-ins, and then you select COM add-ins, the second one. Right? File, Options, Add-ins, COM add-ins, and then you click on Go, and you have what is called Power Pivot here. Why has Microsoft given it to you but disabled it? Because it's a very advanced feature and most users will never use it, but we have to enable it. And what Power Pivot allows you to do, everybody, is to create models in the dataset. Let me show you how it works. I'm going to create a pivot table, insert pivot, but watch. When I create a pivot, I will say that I want to add this table, which is the sales table, to the data model, this one. I think that most of you have worked with pivots, but you would never have selected this option, correct? But I'm going to do that. I'm going to select data model. And what happens now is when I press OK, look what happens. It will create a pivot table, but here's the best part. I can see both the data sets at the same time. Everyone, I can see my ID as well. I can see my sales as well. But will it work? Not really. If I select my sales value from one table and I also select my name from another table, it doesn't quite work because these two data sets are not connected to each other. We know that there is a key. There is the key, which is the customer ID. But how do we explain to Excel that there is a key without using a VLOOKUP? To do that, I go back to Power Pivot. We go to Manage, and we say, like a relational database, what we do on SQL or Microsoft Access, we will say that, see, there are two data sets we have with us right now. One is the sales, the other is the ID, but these are connected to each other. So I can just select my customer ID, draw a line and connect it to CID. Very simple. And this, everybody, is how you create a relational database inside Excel, which completely replaces the need for using VLOOKUP, right? And now you notice magically it works. So despite the fact that this file, everyone is not coming, this data is not coming from one file, it's coming from 5 files. Remember, we have 2013, 14, 15, 16, and we have ID and name. Any change that happens in any one of those 5 files, I can right click and refresh it. Super cool. Yeah, so that completes my Excel demonstration. Yeah, any questions that you have? I'll give you 1 minute. Then for another 10 minutes, I'll do a little bit of PowerPoint, and then yeah, then you can ask your questions after that as well. See, the steps and all you will understand only when you practice, obviously. But then I hope the high-level overview is clear. What is the big takeaway here? Power Query allows you to connect to different data sets. Power Pivot allows you to create a model where you can connect multiple tables together. Right? How did I link? So the linking is very simple. You just have to go to Power Pivot, and then you click on Manage. In the Manage, we have a diagram view. And in the diagram view, I can just click and drag it and put it on top of CID. That's all. Okay. So let me just do it once again. So how do I delete it? Just a moment. Okay, so to connect it, just select, drag it, and put it on top of CID. This is how you create relationships everywhere, even in Python and SQL and all. Great. There are many other things I've not covered. For example, now you can even do calculations in data models, right? You have this tool called DAX, which allows you to do calculations here. It's just too much information, and I think Power Query is more important for you. Power Pivot probably you can save for later, only if you're in hardcore data. But Power Query, I think, is a tool for everybody, and all of you should learn a little bit of it. Absolutely, Shashank. 100% we could have done a join in Power Query. Should you use a join or a model is completely up to you. But very good observation. In Power Query, I could have done if I can just quickly show it to you, data, get data, Power Query editor. If you did not want to use the model, I could have gone to the sales table, clicked on merge query, select the other table, which is my name, select customer ID, create a left outer join, okay. And you notice it will automatically create a join here as well. The end result is the same, it's just the approach that you follow. And every developer has this question, which is better? Is a merge better or is a model better? There are different factors that you have to consider on the basis of which you decide which one is better. Okay, so just give me 10 more minutes for my PowerPoint demonstration. And then of course, I mean, whatever is on your mind, you are more than welcome to ask me. I'll be happy to the best of my ability, I'll be happy to answer. Right? Okay, so see, in PowerPoint, I will give you tips. There's not much to show you other than the fact that the best way to learn how to create good PowerPoint is to go and search for reports online by Accenture and BCG and McKinsey. How do you do that? Just go online and type, let's say, McKinsey PDF. That's all. Obviously, there'll be hundreds of reports available by McKinsey on the internet across different sectors, and you can just download one of them. I'll show you. Let me answer that question. So, Vinayak, on what factors would you decide to switch from Excel to something like Databricks or SQL or SSAS? See, it's not a question of which one to use. Microsoft is positioning Excel as a synthesis. So, for any project that I work on, there is always a combination of different tools. So some work is on Excel, some work is on Power BI, some work is on SQL Server, right? So it's not really a binary decision where we say that, oh, do I need this or that? There are certain tasks for which Excel will always be the best tool. Typically financial modeling. You can't do financial modeling or SQL, right? Financial modeling is a model, scenarios that you have to do on Excel. But for data cleaning, processing, connecting to SAP, probably SQL Server would be much better as an alternative, right? But yes, earlier Excel would not have been capable of connecting to SQL data, but now Excel has the capability of doing that as well, right? So my suggestion is go online, search for any good report, download it, and you will have a report like this available. Fair enough. Now, okay, this is great, but then what do you do with it? So the idea is that once you have a report, let me just look at a more fancy report. Let's say Accenture PDF. And let's open Technology Trends 2021. You have to deconstruct it. That means you have to understand how they have created it, which means I will simply download it right in front of you, download it, keep it on the desktop and save it. And then go to a website called smallpdf.com. You don't have to create an account here. Just go to smallpdf.com. There is an option called convert PDF into PPT, right? Click on that. Select the PDF that we have just downloaded, which is on my desktop, and which is Accenture. And what the tool does is it will automatically convert your PDF into a PowerPoint. And not just a conversion, it will convert it into an editable PowerPoint. And let me show you the final output. It's taking a little bit of time. That's all right. We'll wait. Okay, excellent. So download it and you can see that this is a PDF that has been converted into an editable PowerPoint. Let me show you how it works. Every single component that you see here can be modified. How cool is that? Right. So if you look at, I don't know if there are any charts here, but okay, let's say this one. This also can literally be ungrouped into different objects. Amazing, right? Like this is the biggest cheat. Like you can take these reports that are already available and then go to small PDF, ungroup it. That's it. You have a ready-made PowerPoint available with you. Obviously, you will still have to customize it and modify it and all of that, but then at least helps you start. Because the best form of flattery is imitation. You have to look at what the other best firms in the world are doing and then try to recreate the same thing and try to make it even better than that. Right? I'm sure there are no questions on this. It's a simple process that I've shared with you. The other thing I want to show you is evernote.design. This is probably the biggest collection of links available for different design elements. So you have free icons, free illustrations, gradients, design, whatnot, right? So you'll find a little bit of everything in it. Like I came across this beautiful website a couple of days back, which is, one second. As you can see, I'm a serial cataloger. So I catalog every single thing that I do. And I want to show you my color palette. Just give me a moment. I don't remember which one it is, but it will just take me a moment to find it. Just give me a second. Okay, look at this. There's a website called brandcolors.net. You know what it is, right? It's a collection of brands. You just search for, let's say, Nike. It will tell you what colors Nike is using. You want to look at Microsoft, it will tell you what colors Microsoft is using. How cool is that? Can you imagine how much time this will save you? Because these are color harmonies. These are colors that other people are using, and you can just copy the hex code and then use it for your own presentations. So if I say Google, I know what colors Google are using. So that's what I'm saying. You have to curate the best content on the internet. Why do you think I read so much and I catalog so many things? Because when I need something, I know exactly where to go and find it, right? I mean, this is something always underrated. People say, I can always go and find it. But then when you're working with a timeline, you don't have that sort of time, right? So it's very important to go and have all these things available. Like there's this very nice website I found, which is called Color Leap. What they have done is they have taken, they've gone through different time periods to identify which colors have been prominent. For example, in the 1950s, or let's say the 1940s, post-World War, you will notice that there were these campaigns and different agendas and propagandas and all those. So just look at the way these colors were used. Very interesting. Okay? And these are interesting ideas, right? Because when you're creating your own slides, we don't know what colors to use. And this is an excellent way to look at colors, for example. If you want to look at icons, what I suggest is you go to flaticon.com, FLATICON, and download anything from here. Let's say analytics. And I can simply download an icon. I'll just give you one example. Anyone, it doesn't matter which one. Let's say this one, right? But do not download it as a PNG, download it as a SVG, which is a scalable vector graphic. And what that will allow you to do is you can go to PowerPoint and you can take your icon here, which is this one. You must be wondering, okay, it's nice, but what's the big deal? The big deal is that you can ungroup it. So if you ungroup it, you see what I've done, right? I've broken it into different objects. That means now I can end up putting my own colors on it. I can essentially create my own icon. How cool is that? So even if you're not a designer, you will be able to do stuff like this. I am a designer, so I use a tool called Inkscape, which is an open source tool like Adobe Illustrator. But then you don't want to learn new tools, then you can do this stuff even inside PowerPoint. I have enough content on my YouTube channel, which I'll share with you. I'm not really going to cover more right now because it will be redundant. You can always go and find these things on the channel. So I'll just share this with you. But I would like to keep this time for question and answer, which I think is more important. Right? Yeah, anything anybody would like to ask? You can unmute yourself, that would be faster as well. Just clean up in the meantime. Okay, any suggestions for website of smart art such as Timeline Pyramid? Shashank, there is a website called UExec, which has about 100 plus PowerPoints in it. Even with a free account, you can download them. That's the one I recommend. It has everything in it, all that you require. But you know what? I would strongly suggest that you don't go to UExec and try to take these, what you said, no, timeline pyramid, Gantt charts and all from reports. Like what I do is that I scour the internet and I try to compile good slides from different, management consulting firms and all. If you notice, what I have here is a collection, a large collection with hundreds of slides from different companies. So there is McKinsey, BCG, Bain, AT Kearney. What we've done here is I have like a repository of designs with me. So whenever I need something, I can quickly go and search here. I don't have to go online and search for it because I've already done the hard work beforehand. That's something that I encourage you to do as well. And even though this session is not about Power BI, and I don't want to talk about that too much, do remember that Excel has its limitations in terms of the visual appeal. So make sure that if you want to create dashboards like this, the one that is on the screen right now, there is no excuse for you not to learn Power BI, because no matter how good you are with Excel, you will never be able to do stuff like this. Like this is something I created just a couple of days back. Look at this. This is a Bain color scheme that I used. And it seems nice, doesn't it? But you know the best part? This is dynamic. So I can just type any country here. I will show me the data only for that country. How cool is that? Right? Look at this one. This also I did for a client recently. They wanted to see the map. Look at this. So I can select the category and it shows the map. I can also filter my segment and it shows me the map like this. So, stuff like this, you will never be able to do on Excel any which way. So, learning Power BI is also a must, because, Excel is great from the modeling side and the analytics side, but then, it's important to work on the visualization side of things as well. Most of the companies will focus on that. Great. What else? Any other question? Anyone? Can I share some ideas regarding storytelling with data? Okay. See, for me, storytelling comes from looking at other reports, because that teaches you what should be the flow of presentations, right? Like how should you lead into a content? But if I speak about it, just give me a moment to think of a good PowerPoint that I can show to you. Okay, this is something I did for IBM sometime back. Just give me a moment. Okay, look at this. See, presentations are very difficult to pitch because everybody has their own subjective ideas. I'm just showing you what I did. Take away whatever you want to take away from this, right? So this is something we did for a new product that we are pitching for TensorFlow called TensorPlace. So we are creating a marketplace like GitHub for machine learning and AI, right? That was the context. This was a project for me, which I had to do for a client who was presenting this at a competition that IBM was organizing in the US, right? Like a startup sort of competition. So just want to show you the story behind it. Like the first thing I did was to set the color palette, because I wanted to make sure the same color palette is being used everywhere. These icons and all I've got from Flaticon. Right? Obviously, I've seen very few people do it, but the flow, the table of content is super important, because people need to know what you're going to talk about. Use contrasting colors. So between the heading and the subheading, there has to be contrasting colors. So the focus has to be on the heading and then the subheading. Try to use real images as much as possible. Don't rely on icons too much. Have not more than 3 points on a slide, and sort of make sure to have a font size at least of 18 or 20 to make sure that it is prominent. Whenever you're using images, always have a transparency at the back end. And before talking about why this product is good, talk about the shortfall in the market and talk about the opportunity that you're presenting. Also use keywords. So you notice I'm highlighting the keywords with a differential color. This is what we teach at all the big fours. Differential colors means that if somebody is not reading the entire point, at least they will focus on the important words, like here, hard, very expensive, $15, struggle with documentation, and so on and so forth. Never ever keep a basic Excel chart. It looks uninteresting. Like I could have made a basic Excel chart here, but by making these colors, it just looks nicer. And also have a user journey. So rather than saying that 300 signed up for the launch waitlist, 300 in isolation means nothing. It's just a number. Is it good? Is it bad? Nobody knows. But the fact that there is a journey where we say that 430 developers were whom we surveyed and 300 signed up, we're able to show the conversion rate as well, right? Also, same thing, quotes are very important because this validates your hypothesis and what you're presenting, again, with differential colors. Even the Excel charts that you're using have your KPIs and indicators at the top, where the user always sees a zigzag. So we always look top, bottom, left to right. That means the eyes always go left to right and then like this. So in a Z, basically. Always put your content in such a way that the most important content is in the top left corner, next in the top right corner, then in the bottom left, and then in the bottom right, right? How you want to focus the user's attention. Having grids is underrated. People say, no, this doesn't look good. On the contrary, having grids makes it easier for people to understand how you're presenting the data. Always try to use quadrants and basically your scatter charts as much as possible. It's an excellent, easy way for people to understand, and use bubbles as well. Use smart arts, create your roadmaps and your journeys. Yeah, I mean, that's that. I think I have a video as well on this. Let me just go back and check. In the meantime, if you want to ask something, you can. I'm just quickly searching for whether I have something on this or not. Yeah, I have a video on how to make better presentations. If you want to share the specific link with you as well, just a moment. Sorry, how do I share it? Okay. Yeah, so there's really no rocket science to it. Like I work with a lot of CXOs for whom I create their decks, for board meetings and investor presentations. And the truth is that it's very hard to tell a client what you're doing because PowerPoints are difficult to work with because Excel is very objective. It's either correct or incorrect. But then how do you prove to somebody it's a good presentation? I mean, it's just something you learn over time. Again, coming back to what I told you earlier, the best way is to look at existing work. Like I have this beautiful Google report that I always refer to. It's a joint report between Google, WPP, where I just love the way they have presented it. Look at the way they are presenting their KPIs. Look at the way they are using differential color, the one I just told you, never having more than 3 points on a slide, right? Look at the way they have used icons, the way they are handling colors. They don't have like 17 different colors that they're using, right? The way there are pauses in the presentation. A lot of people say, why do I have suddenly this image with a, which breaks the presentation? It's very important because if you keep on putting slides one after the other, there is no time to pause. And there is no cutoff or demarcation line where people know that, okay, one chapter is over and the second chapter is starting. That's why having these slides interspersed with just a random image is very important. Yeah, so that's what I do. I like to download these. I like to deconstruct them. I like to identify what I like. Like they could have easily written 9 out of 10, but the way they have created a simple donut chart just makes it seem much more impactful, right? Yeah, so that's what I do. I like to read reports and I like to see what they have done correctly and try to use it in my own presentations as well. Yeah. how not to overdo graphics in the presentation. I think Himani, everybody has a challenge. There's no easy answer to that, because the truth is that, like, when I work with clients, um, clients tell me, Havish, I want something flashy. That people should stand up and say, oh my God, how have you done it? That's just how it is. Like, you can see, I mean, I work with a lot of organizations, and the truth is that flash is important, right? It's very rare that you will find subtle, soft focusing more on the content rather than the big bold colors. But yeah, predominantly I think those things are important. So don't worry too much about that. I think if you read 100 reports, trust me, you will not need to ask me that question, Havish, how not to overdo it and how to create a good story from it, how to create a good narrative from it. Because when you read other reports, trust me, you will start to identify who does what very well. Like, I hate Nielsen. I have worked with Nielsen in the past. I was running some market research startups earlier. I absolutely, utterly hate it from the bottom of my heart. The only reason I cover Nielsen is because it's the world's largest market research firms. But the way they present, I mean, there are so many things that are wrong here. The way they use their visuals, just look at this arrow. It looks like somebody has made it on PowerPoint. It's not even, I mean, it's not even precisely done, right? I mean, I can't tell you how much I dislike how Nielsen creates their reports. But that's okay, Look at this. Suddenly they have a blue color and this purple pops up. At least to my eye, it just doesn't look good. This, and this just does not go well with each other. Also, look at the font they have kept. It's so difficult to make out that this is 5 to 10 lakh. You see what I'm doing, right? The idea is not to point mistakes. The idea is to identify who does what well and try to reuse it in your own work. Like the way they have kept these very thin lines and this diagonal. We always say that there was a research done which said that reading diagonal lines are always 50% more difficult than reading vertical lines. Why would you want to keep diagonal when it's so difficult? I have to tilt my head and read it. Looking at what others do tells me I should not be doing it. For example, when they have already said this is 63, 49, 41, what's the point of having a y-axis? I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because when you have a sense of the scale, there is no point of having redundancy. Either don't keep these numbers or don't keep the y-axis. There's no point of keeping both of them. But that's the thing. Different firms are good at different things. Like if you look at McKinsey obviously is very good with its reports. You would love the way they, use their colors and use their S curves and all of that. There's a lot to learn by looking at how they prepare their reports. So there are 2 steps to creating a good PowerPoint narrative. First, identify what you want to do. Second, learn the tools to know how to make it. Like maybe you say, Havish, I love this. But then how do you make it on PowerPoint? That's why you need to undergo trainings and whatever, online courses, and learn how to do it. Because if you say, I will take 30 minutes to create it and I can do it in 5 minutes, then there's a huge differential, isn't it? So the point I'm trying to get across is that PowerPoint is not difficult, but then there's a lot of small learnings that you will have to go through. Like how do you create these gradient lines and stuff like that? But I think the journey starts by first identifying what others are doing, right? And I think that will automatically get you started off on the right foot.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I've designed my own website. So, and I redesign it every 6 months. So if here also you look at the way, yeah, please go on. Oh, it's 9:30. Great. So that's all from my side. I hope there were takeaways for all of you. If you have any questions, you can route it back to me. I'm very approachable on LinkedIn. So you can always write me or DM and I'll be happy to reply back to you.
Thank you, Havish, for providing the wonderful session on Excel today. We have covered a lot of topics: dynamic arrays, spreadsheet modeling, TypeScript, Power Query, Power Pivot, and also thanks for the tips on making impactful presentations and storytelling. The session was excellent and very knowledgeable. We will be in touch again soon about the future possible collaborations or sessions, and we look forward to working with you again. Thank you for the session.
Thank you so much for inviting, and all the very best, everyone. And don't be a stranger, be in touch. I'm always available on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you. Soumya, I think you can end the session now.
Yeah, ending it.